Welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Monday, March 4th, and joining me as always, the ubiquitous Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, you are a senior economist at Zillow. Core to your work, you spend a lot of time looking at the housing industry. Zillow came out with what I thought was a really interesting report last week with regard to what homeowners have to come up with in terms of their own personal earnings to be able to afford a home. And the numbers are somewhat staggering. I mean, this is Anushna Parakash's piece that I'm referencing here. And the lead to her story is home shoppers today need to make more than $106,000 a year to comfortably afford a home. That's 80% more than in January 2020, showing how the math has changed for hopeful buyers who are more often partnering with friends and family or quote unquote house hacking their way to home ownership. So first of all, let's talk about house hacking, and then let's talk about what's changed over the past 4 years. Because I mean, this is like, if you're trying to get into the housing market at this point in time, and I'm hearing this from all kinds of younger people, it is not easy, and it's putting a lot of pressure on employers on the wages side, and employers are dealing with the same economic issues that employees are deling with, with regard to revenue and ultimately, we're all connected in that chain.
Oh, absolutely. Your labor costs are going up. People are probably trying to negotiate higher pay, et cetera, especially if your workforce is not working remotely. So since January 2020, the monthly mortgage payment on the typical U.S. home has nearly doubled. And home values have risen 42.4% to around $343,000 typical home value in the U.S. So when you combine the price increases and the doubling of mortgage rates, it pushes the cost, the total housing cost so much. Yes. That for most people, if incomes haven't kept up, which they haven't, right? They didn't double, right? It means basically that, you're priced out of the housing market. And so the income necessary to comfortably afford, and by comfortably afford, we mean basically having an income that's at least 3 times your housing cost. You need to be at around $106,000 now.
Yes.
To comfortably afford a home in the United States. And that prices out a lot of people.
Right. I'll tell you, the house hacking part, I think is kind of interesting. If you could just sort of explain, what that means, I think that would be, totally illuminating.
Absolutely. I think most people now, can't do it on their own. And so what they do is, especially, I shouldn't say most people, I think for first time home buyers. And so what they do is they pull the funds from mom and dad, right? The bank of mom and dad to get to that down payment and maybe some help on the monthly cost. They buy jointly with friends or family members. So we see co-buying, is on the rise, 44% up to 44% in 2023 from 34% in 2022. And then you have this house hacking, right? House hacking basically refers to, the young people who are able to go out and get a loan with a low down payment, and they're renting out extra rooms in the house in order to make that monthly payment work, right? And I mean, it's worked a lot. It's worked for a lot of people. It's a great strategy when you don't have when you have that extra space and you maybe are living on your own to get on the housing ladder and start making, having that appreciation while at the same time having somebody subsidize or maybe even pay the entire mortgage. a renter pay the entire mortgage. I think that's a great strategy that millennials and Gen Z home buyers seem to be very familiar with.
Right.
And are now, trying it.
Well, let's close with this. I mean, when you take it there, I thought this was really also a terrific part of this particular article. You know, like there's a map of the United States. If you go to the story, and it shows you the kind of income that you need to live in certain places. And, we talk about, $106,000. That's a blended average. That's across the United States.
That's right.
But if you look at the map, and the map will very clearly tell you where this is possible and where this is not possible. Places like Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Jose. I mean, all of those being California cities, obviously with the exception of Seattle. You're talking about requiring an income of in excess of $213,000 in the cheapest of those markets. And if you want to try to live in Silicon Valley, you're talking about you're going to need somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 in income to make it happen. Conversely, you go across the country and you look at some of the older, more established U.S. cities, not to call them Rust Belt cities, but some of them are. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Birmingham, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, the numbers are substantially lower. Pittsburgh is at like $58,000 a year is what you need to be able to buy a home. The highest priced of all these markets is Birmingham, Alabama at $74,000. That sets up nicely if you are or can be in one of those markets. And if you're not in one of those markets and you're looking to go onto the West Coast, it's a completely different proposition.
That's right. Very difficult, especially, young people are the most, mobile. They move they move a lot more than older Americans. They move in search of jobs and opportunity. And so the great feature that we put together out, at Zillow, which is called a room for rent. We now have a room for rent feature where we allow people to see rooms for rent on the map across the country. So they can actually, if they can't afford to go out on their own, and so there's lots and lots of features, affordability tools out there, but you're absolutely right that the map is completely divided. Some of these markets out on the coast are really, those are markets where even though incomes are really, really high and rise really, really fast in those markets, house prices are rising even faster. And the reason why house prices rise so much faster in those markets is because supply just doesn't keep up with demand. And then you might ask me, but why the heck isn't builders building fast enough to meet all that demand? There's so much money out there. People can afford so much and can buy, and builders should be building. And the answer to that is land use regulations. It's highly regulated markets that are seeing this phenomenon develop. There are places where home ownership is completely out of reach. Those markets that are the most regulated are the markets where you have the fewest homeowners and you have the fewest families that can afford a mortgage, sadly. And so working towards deregulating the housing market, making it easier for builders to build. And by the way, examples of those regulations, minimum lot size requirements, minimum parking requirements. They're so silly, right? But they have a tremendous impact, a huge impact. And so we need to work on those. We need to fix those in order to see housing more affordable in those coastal markets.
Yeah, keen insights as always. For Orphe, Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics at americastalking.com.